right, we're back here live at the Playbook Clinic here in Orlando, Florida. And Matt, you're going to go ahead and introduce our next guest.
Yeah, Coach, we got Dan LaForest here with the Influencer Council. Dan's been an integral part in Central Florida football over the last few years with his work through the Orlando Touchdown Club. And now he's venturing into the NIL area, which, is a big word for all these high school coaches. So, Dan, can you talk us through a little bit about what you guys are doing?
Yeah. I think it's a multitude of many things. You mentioned the Orlando Touchdown Club, but also the Cure All-Star Game, which has really, been become a significant factor in recruiting across Central Florida. My time with Varsity Sports Network, again, everything's about making a difference. And, this whole time that I've been involved, very few people know that what I actually do, which is a wealth advisor. And, I think this is the first time that I have the opportunity to marry my passion with my profession. And the Influencer Council is myself and Ronnie Bittman, who is one of the top contract litigators in the country. He approached me about a year ago and asked me my thoughts about being an agent. And I'm like, sure, what, my dream job? And he's like, I'm serious, he's been very instrumental in a lot of celebrities and professional athletes litigating cases for them, protecting their brand and everything. So when you start talking about NIL, what NIL really is and what it's become, I think a lot of people are confused. There's so much misinformation. There's so much confusion. And really it's being used what it wasn't intended for.
Correct.
Right. So I think what we have to do and what we're trying to do is, marry a lot of different factors that are happening. But, the first thing is that we're not doing it to go out and chase, dollars. Ronnie has a successful firm. I'm with one of the largest independent financial firms in the state. This is about setting the what's right for the game, what's right for representing and educating athletes and parents. It's getting all the right information out there. So, that's kind of what the story is behind this. So a lot to kind of unfold with that, So, we can talk about that a little bit as it comes. But, the Influencer Council is really our attempt to really help people understand this NIL space and not only what it is, but the problems associated with it. Everybody keeps talking about getting paid. Oh, I want to get money. But there's so many complications, and I try to take it away from athletes and just talk about, the lottery. Coach, if you won the lottery, what would you do with the money?
Right.
People are like, oh, I would not work. I wouldn't do this. And I tell people all the time is what are the strongest emotions that you could have? And think about this. What is the strongest emotions you can have in life? And everybody wants to talk about love and hate. And I always bring up guilt.
Yeah.
Love is great and it feels great and hate is damaging, but guilt is self-destructive.
It is. It stays inside you.
It stays inside of you, right? Think about it. I just won a lottery for $200 million. All the people close to me don't have $200 million. So what does it do to you? Oh, I'm going to help my friends. Are you really? Are they going to take advantage of you? Mm-hmm. How do you protect not only yourselves, but the people that you love that you don't want anything to change? Oh, nothing will change with me. Yes, it will. And I think that's what we have to realize is, how many guys, you guys have been around the game for a long period of time. How many people we know that have played professional football or played professional sports and don't have a penny to their name anymore? And we see it all the time. I tell clients all the time, turn on ESPN and see what money does to young people.
Yeah. Oh, Coach,
especially
I'd like to say, sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Especially telling this to a 17 or 18-year-old. I mean.
Yeah, and we've talked about 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds. All of a sudden, you're getting a 5-year deal worth $40 million. What do you do with that money? And the first thing they want to do is spend it. I mean, I've sat here with high school kids and literally going, okay, you just got $6 million. What do you want to do with it? And by the time I got done with them, they got 30 years in jail. Because they don't factor in the taxation and all these different things and, your crew and everything else. How do you get paid? So, why not approach it like a business? And that's essentially what we're doing is we're saying, okay, Matt, you just got $100,000. What do you do with that? Well, I want to do this. Okay, well, let's talk about how you want to handle it, and then I'm going to tell you about how we should handle it. And the first thing I do is I put the responsibility of, you're now a business owner, Matt.
Yeah.
You're the CEO of your company. Who's the most important person to any CEO?
CFO?
The CFO. That's exactly right. Does the CFO work for the CEO? The answer is no.
No, he works for the board.
He works for the board. That's right. So the CEO and the CFO actually have equal standing on an organizational chart, because the CEO does not make a move in his company without consultation with his CFO.
Correct.
Right? So I think that's the education, and we spoke at the FACA meeting a couple weeks ago, and the first thing I did is I go, how many Generation X coaches do we have in here? There's probably 45 people in a room, and 10 of them raise their hand. The coaching, we'll talk about coaching a little bit, but we used to get home ec. They used to teach us, they give us a paper and go, if you're 18 years old, you're on your own, how do you live? What would your rent be? They don't do that anymore in schools. No, these kids, if I took one of my kids, took his cell phone and dropped him 10 miles away, he'd be dead. Yes. He couldn't get home. Right? So, how do you change? And this is a problem with problem solving in general. You identify what is there to work with, and then you find ways to chip away at it. So it's no different than dealing with families, because the other problem I have is now you're dealing with 17, 18-year-olds that are coming into this. What's the average age of their families? 40.
Yeah.
How many 40-year-olds have sat down and put together a retirement plan knowing they have 20 to 25 years left until retirement? So again, it's an evolution of thought. And it starts with, how do you deal with the situation ahead of you? It's no different than, people ask me, if I won the lottery, Dan, what would I do? What should I do? And I said, you should call me. They're like, why you? I said, this is why you're going to call me first. Because the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take your cell phones away, and I'm going to put you on a plane. Yep. And you're not going to come back for 10 days. And while you're gone, I want you to think, no, seriously.
I'm not coming back for 30.
I'm going to send you, you're not going to tell your family. I'm going to send you to the islands for 10 days. You're going to come back and you're going to tell me who you want to help. Yeah. And I'm not going to have a CPA here. I'm going to have a tax attorney sitting here.
Correct.
Right? Because we're going to have a plan of how to do this. So it's no different than NIL. Well, we're going to wait and see what happens. Happens for what? It's going to happen fast. If you don't have a plan, how do you adjust that? Do you have legal counsel? Do you have a financial advisor? Do you understand the taxation? What are you going to do as far as philanthropy? Because NIL, name, image, and likeness, is really about who you are as a person. Parents ask me all the time, can you get me an NIL deal? I'm like, why? What's your kid done? Well, he's a 4-star running back. Which has done what?
Yeah.
Dude, does anybody out there know who your son is? Yeah. Do they know him as a person? That's what brands want to.
Is he marketable?
Is he marketable?
Right.
We do media days, right? And I meet with the players and the coaches. And first thing I ask the kid is, do you want NIL? Oh, yeah. And I put a microphone in their face. They go, right? This is who you need to be. You need to let everybody know who you are. Get on social media and walk the dog and tell everybody, you know what, I got to walk my dog. I'm not really happy about it. I got to get ready for school. My mom let me go out there and do that. And man, I tell you, I'm so irritated right now. But you know what? I got to listen to my mom. I know I hate this dog, but I also love this dog. I don't know what I'd do without this dog. You're telling a story, and people are getting to know you.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
Absolutely.
And you start taking a look at these, NIL deals are going out there. It's like 1% of the college. The average payout for NCAA athletes is $3,500 a year.
Yeah.
So you talk about Caleb Williams, right, Matt?
Yeah.
The guy won a Heisman. He has 14 NIL deals. Why? Because he's Caleb Williams. You could drop somebody off at a bus station in Iowa, and they've heard the name Caleb Williams, right? So,
but that's few and far between. That's not the average athlete, right?
That's exactly right.
That's an outstanding thing. Moving forward into it, we're looking in the state of Florida now at NIL happening at the high school level. I know you've been talking to. I know you're at the forefront of the knowledge here, so I want to hear what this is going to do.
I've been getting a lot of questions from coaches. Obviously, the speaking events I've been privileged to be part of. It's inevitable. I don't have an opinion on it because I think it's a problem because they don't have a resolution that structures it. Again, look what the NCAA has done with NIL. It has taken away what it should be, right? Well, no, what should it be? It should be the ability.
It should be the ability to make money off your name, right? It should be that because, like you said, I'm a famous guy and I play at Florida State, that the local car dealership wants to use me to promote their dealership,
right?
And pay me in exchange for doing something, not for being someone, right?
That's exactly right, Kyle, and you nailed it. We talked about 3 letters, NIL. I got another one for you. How about ROI?
Yes,
it's called return on investment.
Right.
Correct.
So, I think it, like I said, I think there's a lot of educational pieces here because a lot of parents are confused about the recruiting process. And let's be real. The game of college football, the world of college football has changed drastically, especially over the last 24 months. It's not the way it used to be. It used to be like, I remember when I was so excited to sign my letter of intent for East Tennessee State. At the end of the day, my football career was intact. It didn't matter if I ever got on the field. They were committed to me.
Yeah.
They were committed to me. Now you have this portal, right? And people are like, oh, did you see who went in the portal? You act like it was their decision.
Correct, right? So the kids wanted it to be a business, and so did the parents. And guess what? Now it's a business. So a coach can now get rid of you, and they're going to sleep fine at night because you're trying to get the bigger, better deal. Well, good. You're an employee now because you're paid.
That's exactly right. And the reality is you don't pan out for whatever reason, and you're not part of their plan because really you got to take a look at it. College coaches are paid millions of dollars to produce.
Mm-hmm.
Produce. We do not have a Bobby Bowden that's going to be around for 30 years anymore. We just saw the last of it, Nick Saban.
Yeah.
That's it. We will not see tenured college football coaches ever again. Why? Because the fan base demands to win today.
Correct.
Right? My biggest question is, and kind of what I've been watching the SEC right now is, Kirby Smart takes the Falcons job, man. What happens to the SEC? I mean, talking about parity.
Yeah.
You got Texas and Oklahoma coming in. Who are the big dogs in the SEC?
Absolutely.
There are none. Look what just happened to Alabama.
I think Lane Kiffin would be in a prime spot to take over.
Well, that's why their names didn't come up.
It's going to come down to now who's the popular one on Twitter. Who's the popular coach that you want to go play for, and who has the NIL money to spend on players?
Oh, no doubt about it. And take a look at that. Look at the collectives. Collectives are struggling to get money. Texas got oil money. That's Beverly Hillbillies right there, boys. Yeah. That's Texas Gold, Texas Tea.
People are going to see these players. I mean, I've watched, I follow UCF close. And what happened with some of these players leaving, even a recent receiver leaving, people are going, I don't want to spend my money on a player to be here for a year and then bail. So why am I giving my money?
Right.
I think colleges are going to see that, and people pulling back on this, going, this is not a good use of our money.
Well, I think the struggle is the disconnect between the boosters. I mean, the boosters, before NIL really got, you saw a downplay in attendance at some of the most prestigious programs. Look at Florida. They struggled with attendance for a number of years, right?
Good.
The boosters, the Gator, the Bull Gators. And I'm just using that as an example because, again, and I know how passionate UCF fans are, but you don't have 100 years of a tradition. Yeah. You don't have generational stuff that goes along here. UCF has a large alumni database that makes on average $85,000 a year with 2 cars and kids. And they don't have expendable income to support UCF's program the way that it needs to be. And I'm not picking on UCF. It's a number of universities, right? I mean, I played, UCF was just now becoming 1AA at the time because we played UCF my freshman and sophomore year at East Tennessee State. Mike Kruzek was there. And, again, I think we have to back away and understand, first of all, what it is, and then look at it realistically for it to move forward. The NCAA has created the genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah.
What I don't want to see is FHSAA do something where the genie's out of the bottle.
Well, I mean, isn't that exactly what's going to happen as soon as they open the floodgates here?
I have no idea because I haven't had the communication with them. I don't know what their ideas are for it, when their timeline is.
I can answer that for you. They don't. No one else can say it, but I can because I got a podcast and I'm different from it now. But they're not an organization that's known for planning things well. And we saw it with the district realignment. I guarantee you, I don't think the plan's fully there. And part of it is because you don't know it, but the other part of it is it's just the FHSA, and it's been killing coaches for a long time. And no one else has to speak against it, but I will because I got a mic and I care. But it's going to be the Wild West. And I tell people all the time, like you said with the NCAA, and I worked in recruiting at Florida State, so it was before all this, but they had the chance to make it whatever they wanted to be, just like you said. And everyone has ideas. My idea was players can get an NIL for however much money they want, but they only get $50K a year and the rest is deferred until after they graduate, right? And they had to get an automatic financial planner, and there's all this stuff that you talked about that I wanted. I didn't gain anything from making this suggestion. No one really cared to listen to me because I'm a nobody, but the same thing needs to be laid out, like you said, in the state of Florida. If you don't have all of these support systems with it when you get that money, it's going to be a complete shit show. And that's what I'm worried about with coaches around here and with players is I already heard it from a coach the other night in Georgia or Tennessee, one of the ones that have NIL. And he said the freshman dad came to him and was like, well, how much money can you get us to stay? And to ask a coach that makes $50K a year to go out and make you $100K or something like that is the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life. And I'm already sick of it.
Kyle, I got one better for you, man. I've literally had college coaches tell me that they've had parents come in and they'll look up their kids' NIL value on On3.
Oh my God, that thing is so full of crap.
It is. It's so misleading, right? And but there's a lot of information on the internet that literally. Anyway, let's go to that. My kid has $150,000 a year NIL valuation. We want $150,000, and the coaches are like, "Huh?" Again, what are you talking about? But the other side of that, Kyle, is too. There are collectives that just are not giving proper education either.
No,
and I know that for a fact because I've literally had a collective tell me that all they care about is kids pay taxes. That's all they care about.
Yeah.
And I think that's wrong. And that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing it so that we can change some lives and we can give them a format that helps them grow as individuals, helps the parents understand the process a little bit. And maybe they're educated a little bit more than what they are in many things.
Yeah.
But I see this becoming a problem if it's not done correctly. And what I do give the FHSA a lot of credit for is they're holding off, and hopefully they're watching what's happening in Texas and in California, and the other 31 states that have approved it, and learn from their mistakes. And that's the key to everything. Everybody's talking about metro suburban right now and reclassification. I think at the end of the day, you have to understand that anything that you do, number one, not everybody's going to be happy.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Not everybody likes this podcast.
What?
Seriously, Kyle, not everybody does. Trust me, I've been in your shoes, guy.
I know.
Not everybody's going to enjoy the effort that you're putting into this.
Yeah, no doubt.
But the key is to make sure that the majority do.
Yeah.
Right. And like for me, I don't have an opinion because my job is to build relationships and not to destroy them. So, I don't want to speak against any particular association or what they're doing or not.
That wasn't the intention. I did.
I know. I know. I just, I'm playing the politician here. So,
yeah.
Again, I think just we're in a position now where we have to understand. I think you said it before was be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
For every action, there's a reaction.
Correct.
And I think we have to be smart about this, but more importantly, what we're trying to do is bring the education first.
Yeah.
We're not chasing, I'm going to promise you this and we're going to make you money and we're going to help you draft and we're going to help you get recruited. No. I'm not doing that.
Correct.
What I'm doing is saying, let's take with what we're working with. Let's take with what we know and how do we build on it? How do we build on your situation? If you are a star football player and you're making $100,000 from the collective and you want an NIL deal, then how do we build toward that?
Yeah.
How do we take the resources that we have and take your brand? The part of my presentation, I hope you guys get to see it, is the second slide of the presentation is Imagine If. And guess who I have on there? Brian Bosworth, Tim Tebow, Deion Sanders, and the 90s Hurricanes.
Yeah.
who literally made millions and billions of dollars for the universities and the NCAA. I remember, I love telling the story. I remember being a junior at East Tennessee State in 1990, and they added the 11th football game to the schedule. Guess what our locker room talked about? We're going to get paid for this one. Guys, we're going to get paid for this one. They're making us play another game. They better compensate us for this. Guess what did not happen?
Yeah, you didn't get a cent for that one.
So, Kyle, I like what you said because, everybody asked me, if you were to do this, how would you do it? And it goes back to a little bit of what you said. I think if the NCAA would have come up with profit sharing.
Yep.
And just said, you know what?
Yep.
This thing, we got to get ahead of this thing. We do profit sharing. And you get access to the money one of three ways. One is you must graduate. You can take the lump sum. Pay the taxes. Good luck to you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Key there was what? Graduate.
Yep.
Well, if you're going to graduate and you're going to accumulate money, you better not do what? Transfer.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing, and listen, there's situations where you need to transfer.
100%.
I get that.
Yeah.
Okay. Second situation, do you know what $100,000 does compounded by 8% over 40 years?
Correct.
It's a pension.
Yeah.
Third way, a little bit from the IRS, need a little help, but you have access to the money for medical expenses.
Which I like a lot there.
Right?
Yeah.
And what you're doing is you're building wealth. You're building generational wealth, but you're sharing the profits. Now, Title IX plays into this, and this is really what has not. Because I can sit here and talk about football all day long, but I know certain universities that pay their softball players $500 a month. Like I said, the average payout for an NCAA athlete is $3,500 a year.
That makes sense, yeah.
Right?
Correct. I think everyone thinks that. I love when they're like, well, so-and-so is going to get $25 million. I was like, no, they're not. I don't care if that number's thrown out.
Look at what was the Rosado kid at Florida last year? $12.5 million?
Yeah.
Ain't no high school kid worth $12.5 million.
No.
And I know there's high school kids watching, and I got news for you. No,
you're not. And most of the coaches aren't worth $12 million either. I'm just going to be honest with you.
Oh, no doubt. Go back to performance pay, right? You get a $4 million deal, and you get incentives. Let's just use the SEC. SEC, you get $4 million a year. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
$4 million is a lot of money. And then you get an incentive for your recruiting class. You get an incentive for winning the SEC championship. You get an incentive for winning a bowl game. Yeah. You get an incentive. Nick Saban will still be making $12 million a year.
Correct.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yet you're not on the hook with Jimbo Fisher for $76 million. Oh, by the way, $76 million?
Why are you doing the chop? He won where I was at. I'm good. He didn't win at Texas A&M.
$76 million is a lot of money you could be spending on your players.
But that's the same thing, right? It's wrapping up this money in players, wrapping it up in coaches and all this stuff. And that's always my question to it. Like, is it, I know, right, it can't be based on performance, and I know that's supposed to be the NIL thing, but, like, are they actually making players work for any of this money? Like, are they making them do appearances? Are they making them do this? Because those coaches, whether you think they're worth it or not, they have to do certain things. They have to do press conferences. They have to show up to this. They have to be at booster meetings and all this other stuff. It's a job, and so for me, I'm okay with paying kids. Like, at no point am I against any kid making as much money as they feel like they're worth. I'm really not. But there's got to be some responsibility that comes with that, and I don't feel like that's happening. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't feel like that's happening. I feel like kids are just getting given money, like you said. They're not being educated on things. They're not taught that there's any responsibility with it, and I think that's a struggle. And I'm not blaming the kids for that. I'm blaming the adults around the kids. No,
it's just like any other issue. And again, you go back to the situation, because once that genie's out of the bottle,
there's nothing
who are the winners at the end of the day? It's the attorneys.
Yep.
Because there are going to be lawsuits left and right. Right now, the NCAA is actually faced with the transfer thing. This is a class action lawsuit that's getting ready to come on this.
Oh yeah,
it's an antitrust issue.
Yeah,
and that's something that Ronnie and I were talking about this week, because we were representing a high-profile student athlete in the portal that everybody in the country knows about, that already burned a transfer, and we were trying to set up a home for them, and we were trying to do all these different things. And the letters that Ronnie had to send to the NCAA, because again, that's part of what we do. We want to assist and to help simplify and educate along the way. Like, here are your options. This is what you can do. That's what an advisor does, right? We're not decision makers. We advise.
Yeah.
We advise on your options. We give you the knowledge to make better decisions. And that's what we're trying to do, is help with this. But you got a kid that makes it, goes into the portal because he's mad at his position coach. Well, did that make good business sense?
No.
Correct.
Well, what are the resources? And then I've had kids who are like, well, they give me financial advisor at so-and-so college. And I'm like, they work for the college, not you.
Yep. Bingo.
Right? They work for the college. And again, I've already told you what their agenda is.
Correct.
So who's on your team?
No doubt.
And again, I just think that, we have to provide more resources, and we have to find people who actually, because there's no money in it at NIL. There's no money in it for us. Yeah. We're not doing this for money. Now, I'll be honest with you. I hope we're in a position where we can represent some guys going to the NFL here at some point. But,
correct.
Absolutely.
But again, that's a portion of what it is. But it's an ever-changing world, and you just have to have people that are on the front end of understanding what those changes look like. I was on a radio program a couple months ago, and they brought on, we got an NIL expert, Dan LaForest, coming on. I'm like, whoa, first stop. There is no NIL expert. Anybody that turns on, says they're an NIL expert, turn off the TV, wow. Turn off. And it's so funny. I was watching the news the other night, and one of the local TV shows had some guy come on talking about NIL for high school. Oh, it's going to be big. It's going to be bigger than you ever think. And I'm like, who is this clown? I don't even know who he was. And I know everybody in the state.
He was the Mel Kiper of NIL.
Any coach that has got out and fundraised and went through that grind of just fundraising for high school football, it makes it seem laughable. Like that high school kids would get paid to do what they do.
Well, think about this for a minute. There's going to be that 1% that might get a brand deal because they're going to invest because they know they're that kid that's going to go and be significant. We have seen in this space as coaches and whatever, we've seen generational talent. We've seen it. We know it's coming, right? I was just talking to Dwight Thomas about Emmitt Smith. We were talking about Emmitt. He was so against. He was just telling a story about the fact he was so against playing Emmitt Smith his 9th grade year. His coaches had to talk him into it because he just did not want to play freshman on varsity.
Right.
And he goes out his first game and runs for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns as a 9th grader.
Yeah.
At Escambia High School. And we all know the significance of what Coach Thomas has done to this game here across the state of Florida and beyond. Yeah. But
he's a staple here in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, Dwight, but it's nice to have friends like that. But
hey, Coach, big hot topic here. I heard you speak on it briefly earlier. Coaches pay in Florida. I think we're going to be doing an episode with the Coalition to Pay Florida Coaches, whatever.
Yeah, we have them coming on next week, hopefully.
Yeah, Ramsey?
Yeah. Yep.
Yes.
So, can you give us your take, what you've seen so far, and what is it going to take to push this forward?
All right, now you're going to get the emotion out of me. Anybody that knows me, I'm all about the game, the coaches, then the players. Anybody that talks about it's all about the players, I shut them down right away. Okay? This game has been around longer than the coaches. The coaches have been around longer than the players. And the players, we want them to benefit. And if we stick with this structure, the players always come out in the end. Correct. Because the game, it's like people say the game has changed. No, it hasn't. It's still 11 versus 11. Matt knows, and I've told Matt, when I used to coach offense, I used to tell people, like, what offense you run? I could tell you the offense that I love to run. It has 5 players that never change: a center, 2 guards, and 2 tackles. Outside of that, man, I have no idea what I'm doing until I know what I got to work with.
Yeah.
But I am an advocate of professions that are abused and are undercompensated for the time and effort they put in.
Yeah.
And that's law enforcement, that is fires, that is teachers. But coaches are grossly underpaid for who they are. What has the game provided me as a 53-year-old adult that has been successful in so many different things and failed in so many others? Yeah. It's provided me the foundation to be resilient.
Just like the new head coaches.
right? And I know everybody that has, and it took me a long time before I got to a point where I went, you know what? My high school coach made the difference in my life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And sometimes that does happen. But, at the end of the day, what a high school coach provides, I love how people like, oh, my son, my kids are so good. I'm like, have you seen them at school when you're not around?
Not my baby.
The coaches, and you guys can appreciate this, especially, guys have been head coaches, and that's a whole nother discussion. Who you are to these kids is so imperative to who they become, because you are compensating in a lot of times for what they're not getting at home.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't understand that the let's just call it what it is, a stipend that you are given. Football isn't a season. We're not coaching 11 weeks.
Correct.
We're coaching 365 days a week, because football is no longer a seasonal sport. It's a calendar year sport with off-season training. Then you've got outside influences. You've got people who are trying to undermine you. You've got parents who are trying to tell you that their kid is the next Emmitt Smith, that's the next Tim Tebow, that's the next Drew Brees. And the reality is they might be, but you have a better shot of getting struck by lightning or winning the lottery.
Are you saying parents don't understand football talent sometimes?
Oh, I'll tell any parent that any time. You got parents who are like, oh, I play the game. Really, at what level?
Playing the game doesn't mean you know it. I tell
Listen,
this joke all the time.
The best coaches, Kyle, are the guys who never were on the field.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
For the most part, yeah. And the thing I tell people all the time, like, look, I know a lot of guys that played. I know some guys that played at a high level. And I tell this joke on Twitter all the time, and I say it all the time. Can he draw power to an underfront? If not, I really don't want to care about his football opinion, because that's a basic part of football. And look, I was a DB's guy for a long time, and I couldn't draw up the front. But you want to be a real coach, you better know the whole game. And so, like I said, if you can draw up power to an underfront, that's where our conversation starts. If you can't do that, then we're probably not going to talk ball. And I kind of would suggest that to dad sometimes. It's like, well, you want to go get on the board right now? We can talk through that. And they're, well, coach, I'm just saying.
Talking football is easy, man. Calling
Correct.
plays is easy. It's easy to call a play.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I've got 4 downs to get 10 yards. Right?
Yep.
But we're not factoring in whether or not one kid jumps off sides. We're not factoring in one kid slips. We're not factoring in one kid fumbles the football. We're not factoring. It's never the game plan. It's the execution of it.
Or
right?
his girlfriend broke up with him, and been in his head.
Oh yeah. The woman of his dreams at 16 years old, right?
Yeah.
So
that, just like you're saying, I don't want to get too much into this because I know it's not the topic, but and it's knowing all those different things that coaches spend all these hours on, right? It's knowing the matchup. It's knowing what they're going to do on 3rd and 6. It's knowing, how they're going to align and what their weaknesses and all this stuff. Like you said, it's not calling a play on Madden, right? Because everyone I've ever known that draws up a play, and I crack this joke about offensive guys, defensive guys do it too. We've never drawn up a play that doesn't work. Right. I've never gone on the whiteboard and drawn up something that doesn't get a tackle for loss or something like that. And every offensive guy draws it up, right? Power hits home for an 80-yard touchdown every time. In real life, it may be only going for 6, but every time they draw it, boy, it's going 80. So,
dude, it always does, because we account for everything, right? Everything's accountable on the chalkboard, right? Everything's accounted for. I've got a hook block on the center. We're going to trap the center. We're going to do this. We're going off tower. We got the fullback lead, and we got the scoop by the tight end. Whatever it is, it's always perfect. It's concept. It's how do we execute it? And we can apply that to everything in life. I can sit here and say, I'm going to set my alarm for 6:30 every morning, and I'm going to be at work at 8. But I didn't account for the accident on I-4. So
the most lovely road in all of the world.
I-4. I-4 and 436, the heartbeat of Orlando.
One part that I don't miss about Orlando, I hated I-4, and I'm so glad I don't have to drive on it. Not that Jacksonville's perfect with traffic by any means, but I'll take it over I-4. So.
It's better than Tampa. Still better than Tampa.
That's true. So
I can't even fathom. That's like anytime I have to go to Tampa, I cringe.
So for coaches' pay, what's the next step for coaches to take? I mean, are we heading the right
So let's understand the challenges that we have right now. Is coaches' pay is controlled by each school district.
Yep.
And again, how do you get it on the agenda when you've got teachers that have issues that they're trying to, got unions that are forcing for teachers' pay and teachers' benefits. They have other things that it's just never gets to a position from a district level where it gives serious attention. I do like what Dr. Andrew Ramjet is a good friend of mine, and he has kept me up to date with the things, and he just was able to get in front of legislation last week.
Yep.
He and I spoke yesterday. Mike Norvell came in, and I don't want to ruin too much if you guys are going to have him on next week.
No, you can talk about it because
all right, let's go.
Maybe people don't know about it.
So at the end of the day, what is happening is they're going back here in March, and he has gotten every head coach in the state of Florida except for one, and I'm going to try to help him with the other one, that is going to appear on behalf of the high school coaches in the state of Florida. It has to be done in state legislation, and they have to find a way to get coaches more compensation in some way. And again, you talk about the glorious things about the state of Florida from a state income standpoint. We don't have it. We don't have state income tax. Every time they start an I-4 project, by the time they completed it, it's outdated by 10 years, right? So, again, there's so many challenges, but I think it's got to be handled at a much larger place where we're finding ways to get compensation, because the reality is this: no state puts more players into Power 5 schools at any sport than the state of Florida. But yet we're like number 48 in compensation. And you're asking, and not only that, look at what happened today. Playbook clinics. It's just another way for coaches to get educated, and we're not getting the coaches in here. Who needs to be in here? It needs to be every assistant coach at minimum in the state of Florida. It needs to be youth coaches that, love to draw stuff up. But the reality is, I like the ability with youth coaches that it connects them with the high school programs.
Correct.
It allows them to be in one room and have conversations that's very difficult to have. You guys have been, good coaches, and how do you I think those are critical relationships, because at the end of the day, I remember coaching youth. I was a volunteer. I wasn't getting paid for that. And you have a bunch of guys that just really want to make a difference and stay involved in the game. And having that connection with high schools is critical to the development of young talent. So I think these things are very big.
And absolutely. And when I got to my second head coaching gig, my priority was to have a youth football clinic for my youth coaches there in that city, and making sure we were bringing them in and teaching them what we were doing to properly prepare kids as they moved up, right?
Correct.
And trying to provide those resources. And you don't see a lot of high school coaches even doing these things for their youth programs.
Well, let's talk about that, right? And you've been in this position. You have 7 days in a week, and one of them Sunday, and you have families, and many of you guys have young families, right? So you're giving up time away from your kids and your wife. And I've said this on my shows, and I've said this: the greatest gift God's ever given us is a coach's wife.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
A coach's wife is something special, man, because they never see their husbands. How do you continue that? How do you give it enough tension where it makes a serious difference? And the hard part is, as a head football coach of a high school, you're not responsible for your team on Friday night. You're responsible for the JV team on Thursday night. You're responsible for the freshman team on Wednesday night. So you're responsible for so many things that are going on. Not to mention the fact that you've got so many other issues. You have people outside of your circle that are influencing your kids. You have parents that have concerns. I always tell guys all the time, I want to be a head coach. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
I was Lonnie Flores and I had lunch a few months ago, and I said, what every head coach should take? And he's like, what's that? They should be required. They take a psychology class. and I'm not joking, man. I mean, there's so much, that's why Jimmy Johnson was so successful, right? He was a psych major at Arkansas. Think about the little things that make differences, but you're talking about high school coaches that are literally influencing so many different factors of a young person's life. I mean, high school, everybody talks about middle school being the craziest time of a young person's life. Well, high school isn't much different, and
Correct.
we're trying to, we're trying to get kids to the adult age of 18 and giving them the functions, the intellect, the experiences to become the adults we all pray for them to be. And playing sports, people ask me all the time, when should a kid play football? And that's a whole nother discussion. But man, this game is like no other game. Kids are like, oh, I'm not going to play football anymore. I'm going to play lacrosse. Okay. But football is so much more.
Yeah.
Basketball, football is so much more. And I want them all to play sports. I want to play all as many sports as they want.
Yeah, and a couple notes on what you just talked about, because we covered a lot there. The first thing is when we talk about pay is we have a great shining example just north of us where Georgia does a good job in compensating their coaches. They tie their stipends, I believe. I don't know if I'm 100% accurate, but they tie their stipends to a percentage. So as they get raises as a teacher, their stipends also go up and their retirement's better. And it's like, let's look at that stuff as opposed to in the state of Florida, we all got a raise at one point to 47,000 or whatever it was. But then your first step is still 14 years later. It's like, all right, so I got a raise, but I got to wait 14 years to get another $1,000 a year. What are we doing here? And to your point about the clinic, when I worked at Huddle, one of the coolest things I went to was the THSCA Coaches School. It's in Texas. Their association has a giant clinic every year that's kind of like AFCA's that goes on for every coach in the state of Texas, and they're all required to be a part of that organization. They all pay in, it covers their insurance, and they all get a great clinic. The clinic is available for them, for youth coaches, for their wives. They actually have wives teaching school. And there's no reason why we can't, as a state, go out and look at the great things in the other states and cherry pick them. We do it as coaches all the time. We go to Nick Saban and we cherry pick them, and we go to Kirby Smart, and we go to Lane Kiffin and all these other coaches, and we cherry pick their ideas. Why aren't we doing that as a football collective, as a community? Well, and that's what's frustrating for me.
But we have that, Kyle. We have the FACA, the Florida Athletic Coaches Association. I think, and I've gone to those meetings, and they're not attended that way.
But so that's my thing is so my question is every school paying into that for the coaches and getting them to go? We can make that almost a requirement. I mean, the THSCA, you can't even look at a job board without being a part of that organization. You cannot find a job in Texas without paying $100 to look at their job board, unless someone posted on Twitter. It needs to be made a standard, right?
Well, the problem is nobody's looking at the job board in Florida anymore. They're looking at the job board in Georgia and Texas.
You're right. You're correct. So I think we're both arguing the same thing in a different way.
Exactly.
We kind of have the skeleton of it, but we need to do a better job of pushing it, right? If it's the FACA, which absolutely, we need to make the clinic bigger and better, and we need to make sure people are attending it. And I know, right, that's the chicken and the egg, right? What gets people to attend, it's bigger, but in order to have it bigger, people have to attend. So I'm with you, and again, it's all passionate, just like it is for you. I'm passionate about coaches being taken care of in the state.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to be successful. I want people to leave Georgia to come here. I don't want to keep losing our best coaches to Georgia. I don't want to keep losing our best coaches to Texas and Tennessee. I want coaches to be like, oh my God, Florida stepped it up so well that I want to go there. We're supposed to be the place that people retire. So why wouldn't they want to come down here and coach for 10 years and then retire? So
I don't disagree with that at all.
I'm frustrated in a caring way, but I want things to get better for coaches, and whatever. This is my platform to do it, so I'll scream with the top of my lungs. But I want things to get better. So if if the Board Drill podcast can help the FACA have a better clinic, we'll do it. I don't know how much influence we have, probably none, but if we ever get it, we'll push it.
Well, we can go get Shelton Cruz over here now.
I've known Shelton for a long, long time, so I'm all in.
I talked to Shelton. We're going to get him on the podcast, and we're going to make sure we get it all out of him.
Yeah. Remember, and I've said this about anything. You've got all the people in the world with the want tos.
Yeah,
you got to find the people with the how tos, and
Correct.
That's the difference between success and failure. So, we've got 100%. Some great resources right here in the state of Florida. We just have to get the right people to listen to them. And I think that's where I'm giving a lot of credit. Coach Cruz, Dr. Andrew Ramjet, again, what he's doing right now. And again, everybody's looking for this great result to happen. And you've got to start taking, it takes time. That's exactly right. I always say, take the wins where you can find them and build on them.
Yeah.
Right. And it's no different than, I just listened to a coach talking from Texas was talking about building culture. And, you do the little things, right? You find the little wins first, because you can't have a big win without a little win. And he had a Bobby
Correct.
Bowden comment. Here's a quote. He goes, you start off by losing big.
Lose small.
And then you get to losing by a little bit. And then you get to winning by a little bit. And all of a sudden you're winning by a lot.
Winning big. Yep.
You're winning big. So, I think we just have to simplify that process, whether we're talking about kids and training. And also, Mike Bianchi quoted me last year. He's writing an article on high school recruits and everything else. And I said, yeah, we got a lot of D1 kids. They ain't going D1.
Yeah.
I talked to Andrew Ivins this year, and I said, dude, is it me, or do we have more 4-star athletes in Florida than I've ever seen in my life? Mm-hmm. And there's just not room for them. Where are we going to put them?
Yeah.
Okay, let's transition a little bit, Coach. Well, Mr. LaForest.
Did you think we were going to podcast?
We're about, yeah. I didn't think we were
Yeah,
going to
we're getting close. This has gone quick, and there was a lot of stuff.
Boys,
there was a lot of stuff I wanted to cover, and this is something I want to touch on because it is near and dear to my heart. Being part of the Tyler Lampe Foundation is your Cure All-Star Game, the Cure Bowl All-Star Game, I believe is the way you guys say it, and what you guys are doing for the community, doing that All-Star Game.
Well, first and foremost, I want to give all the credit to Alan Gooch and the Orlando Sports Foundation and Mark Line, who has been tirelessly working on this.
He's right here.
They gave me, they came to me 4 years ago, and I was just blessed to be part of it. And I've tried to do what I can, but I tell the kids every time I have an opportunity to get in front of them is, number one, and I love what we're doing with this, and this was Mark's great idea, is cancer has affected every single one of us one way or the other.
100%.
And we have them write down a family member, a friend that has been affected by cancer, whether they have succumbed to cancer or they've survived cancer, and they're playing for that person. So it's not one of the things that I got involved in is I want to get away from this All-Star game where it was a last ride game and you're a senior. No, this is going to mean something.
Yeah.
And we want the right kids. We want it to mean something. So what the Cure All-Star Series has become, it's become a recruiting event, but it's been very educational. It's an educational. I tell the kids all the time, I'm like, look around you. Do you know everybody? Well, no. This is what college is like.
Yeah.
This week we got a sad story that Sports Illustrated is going bye-bye. Well, that was our connection, man. I remember the coolest thing was I remember getting, they used to have the centerfold and they'd have this full page deal. And I remember, and I took this out and put it on my wall. And back in the mid 80s, who's the best program in the country? Nebraska.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Nebraska,
that's where I
dude.
was gonna
Tom
go. Definitely early
Osborne.
90s too, yeah.
Tom Osborne was the dude, right?
Early 90s, man. If you were playing video games in the early 90s, they had the NCAA first came out. If you weren't picking Nebraska and running the triple option, you were losing.
Little Tommy?
They would have 150 kids come out for football. And they had an overview. They didn't have drones back then, so I don't know how the hell they got this shot. But they had every yard marker, the whole field was lined up with guys doing stretches. And it said, how does it feel to be another high school hot shot? Sports Illustrated, get the feeling. And I was kind of like, wow, and that's essentially what it is, man. College is just a bunch of guys that were really good college or high school players.
Yeah.
And then the pros is just a bunch of really good college players. And, I think, we have to get back to the reality of these things and teaching the humility of this game too. So, again, we can sit here and talk about all the problems, but I also want to stress the successes of what these games do. And at the end of the day, the greatest joy, you guys know this, is when you see a kid's 10 years later and he goes, Coach, you made a difference in my life. Right.
100%.
I was at the Oviedo Ale House last night and ran into two former players and their parents, and the gratitude, later on. Bradley Lloyd.
Ah,
You
Brad.
remember Bradley Lloyd? The
I
other one
remember Bradley.
was younger. You wouldn't remember the other one.
Okay.
But came up and just the gratitude expressed by the parents. It's a bond that, you can never break. And seeing that's what still makes it all worth it, And if you know anything about what happened with me, I went through a lot of stuff there at Oviedo, but seeing those players years later, just makes it all worth it.
What's scary for me is I don't recognize half of them. I don't remember them, right? So
it changes quick.
It does, and I talked to a kid the other day that I'm trying to get an offer for, and the reality is we need to start preparing the expectation. You better start building for D2.
Yeah. And actually, we're going to have a Division II head coach come on. We don't normally take college coaches because we are geared towards high school, and I'm adamant about that. But I played it shorter, and I played very loosely. I was on the team that gave me a helmet. But the head coach played there with me, and so I said, hey, is there any chance you'll hop on with us and talk about how recruiting's changed with NIL and transfer portal? And he was like, Kyle, I'm there. So we're going to have the head coach of Shorter University, who's in the Gulf South, come on and talk about recruiting and how D2 is really a bigger thing now because their starting tight end at Shorter a couple years ago is now the starting tight end at Florida State, Kyle Morlock. And so there is still a path, and I'm with you. And I didn't mean to interject there too much, but
you're absolutely right.
I want to do a little pub there, but we're going to have that because we want to provide that knowledge for coaches because I'm with you. I was a D3/D2 player, and I'd never trade that for the world, but I think more players need to think about that path.
So funny thing is Larry Bluestein and I were talking on the way up here, and he wants – so let's talk about D2. Let's talk about the fundamentals of D2. If you're going to play D2, you better want to play football.
It's only 63 scholarships, and they're able to split. So.
Oh, no. It's not a full scholarship.
Correct. Yeah. We had one or two
it's
guys
80, It's 80%.
Yeah.
In general, again, let's get down to the bones. It's 80%. Yeah. Okay.
You got to have a Pell Grant, too, and all that other stuff.
Pell Grant and all these things. So why are we not educating that at the freshman level right now? And Larry and I had this long discussion. He goes, Dan, nobody is doing this. Nobody is preparing the student athlete and the families for the realities of what this really looks like. So I think we have to start taking a look at that. And so I was talking to a kid the other day. He's like, Coach, I just really want to play football. And I said, well, what's the hang up here? I've got a couple D2 schools I'm talking to right now about you. Well, my parents have a hard time with having to pay for that 20%. And I said, well, let's take that 20% out of the factor for a minute and let's analyze it. There are Pell Grants. You've got the FAFSA money. And he's like, well, FAFSA's backed up right now. You're not reporting until August.
Correct.
And let's not account for 4 years. And then I want to ask you, let's take football out of the equation. Who do you want to be? What do you want to get your degree in? What do you want to do? Well, I have a detailing business, and I want to get a business degree so I can run my detail business.
Ooh.
I said, the first advice I'm going to give you, son, is a business degree does not tell you can run a business.
Correct.
Okay. The second thing is for you to achieve this goal, because there are a difference between goals and dreams.
Yeah.
You may have to make an investment in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And let's take it in steps. Let's pay for 1 year.
Yeah.
And let's evaluate before the second year. Is it worth the return on your investment?
Yeah.
Welcome to Business 101, brother.
There's nothing, no better lesson than life, right?
Right? So now you're talking about, let's take this and let's see now. Oh my God, you just got brought up to an FCS school full ride. Because if you're that passionate about being a great football player, not everybody shares that passion. Because guys, you guys have seen this. How many guys have we found homes and in 6 months they're back going, yeah, it was a lot harder than I thought. We told you it was going to be hard.
All the time.
Every year. Every year. You send 10 guys out, 6 of them are home by January 1.
Yep.
But you look at guys like Tank Dell at Mainland, who took that path. Smaller, undersized receiver. They didn't care about his speed. So you're too small. He goes, small school, NAIA, bounces up, works his way up to Houston, gets drafted. That opportunity is there. Okay, that opportunity is there for those players that have that passion. Passion's the key word you said.
Yep.
Passion, perseverance. You can do anything you want if you put it to it.
Matt, I ask kids all the time, what does it take to be successful? And they're all going to say hard work, right? And I said, everybody has hard work. That's not the difference maker. And they're like, what's the difference maker? Sacrifice.
Yeah.
What have you sacrificed? That's the key. You have to sacrifice something if you want something really bad.
Correct.
But again, you don't have to solve the world's problems in one day. You take little things and you start adjusting them. If you want to go play college football, take that D2 offer, you take the 80%, you find a way to help out with that 20%, and then you make annual decisions. Am I on track? Here are the things we're going to do. Because the portal is killing high school recruiting, but let's use it to our advantage.
Correct. And coaches know, everyone understands what it is. And so maybe we need to come back, Matt, and have a episode. We'll bring Dan on and we'll talk purely about this. What's the value of D3, D2, FCS, and FBS and all that? I think that'd be a great topic to help educate people. Would you
guys don't want me back on, man. I will kill your ratings.
No, we want you.
Ratings.
Listen,
Ratings.
We have to have people watching it first. No, I think that's a great educational thing, and I think all the high school coaches don't know that. They truly don't. And again, this is not me blaming them. I think that's a good episode. So maybe here in a couple of weeks we get you back and we talk about that.
Yeah. There's so many topics that really need to get deep dives in, right? Because again, when you look at problems, you want to break them down.
Yeah.
And when you start finding small solutions, they start adding up. Like Coach Bowden said, you have the big losses, and then you get to we lost like a little bit. How do we build on that? How do we build that culture? And I think the process of recruiting, I think the process of playing the game, if somebody is truly devoted to being great, they have to understand that process.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, we would love to be a platform that helps out talking about all those different issues. So anytime you want to talk, you got our information. Let's get you on. And I don't care if it's 4, 5, 6 times. If it's going to help educate coaches and players in this state and around the country, we're in to be the medium for it. We know we're not the biggest podcast, but you know what? We will do our best to do it and take clips and get it out there on the internet. So we'd love to have you back on.
Name, image, and likeness, guys.
Absolutely. There we go.
And ROI.
An ROI. Perfect. Well, thanks for coming on the Board Drill podcast, and hopefully we'll get you back here in a couple of weeks, and we're going to break down all those little things, and we'll get that education out there.
I appreciate it, guys.
Hey, real quick, what's the best way for people to find Influencer Council?
Yeah, you can look up bitmanlaw.com. There's an Influencer Council section on there. You can follow me on Twitter and on social medias, Dan LaForest Football. You can email me at dan@influencer-council.com. Listen, there's so many different ways that you could find me. It's I'm not hard. They can reach out to you guys. You guys get a hold of me for them. But again, it's a pleasure to be on here. You guys doing a great job on this, and you're right. Everybody now has a platform, but it's always going to be the quality, not the quantity.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We're working on the quality. We're trying.
Yeah, slowly.
We'll get Ramjet on here for you guys.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll get that done.
Well, have a great day. Enjoy the rest of the clinic.
Thanks, Kyle. Thanks.